one thing that's very important for the media to be aware of is that crypto companies and crypto founders want to get covered in the media because it provides them with legitimacy. So when I write a founder, I do want to do my due diligence. I wanted to know if this person is going to be the next Sam Bankman-Fried.
I feel very grateful every day to not be a market analyst and not have to guess where Bitcoin's going to be in 3 months because I would be wrong every single time.
Yeah.
People sometimes joke like, oh, you could get rich if you traded, if you were allowed to trade. And I'd be like, no, I wouldn't. I would lose all my money.
You seen crypto going mainstream? And if so, how is that impacting your reporting?
It's so much more political now because we now see reporters covering Trump, including at Forbes. I think there's a lot more attention and coverage from that perspective.
How do you, as reporters, sort of strike that balance between being skeptical and being optimistic?
I think every journalist by their nature is highly skeptical of anything, and that's what makes you a good reporter.
What's not being covered right now about crypto that should be covered? You look ready, Leo, so go right ahead.
I mean,
Hi, everybody. Very excited to be here today. Very excited to be speaking to 3 excellent journalists covering the crypto space. Thank you very much for joining us today. We'll just jump right in. I'm going to hit you with a very simple question, which is crypto, Bitcoin, this entire space has had its shares of ups and downs, its scandals, its highs, its lows. What is the story? What's the headline of crypto today? If you're just taking a snapshot in time right now, what is the headline?
I would say it's the Trump impact on crypto, and that is the story to cover. And there are so many different angles to it, and I think me working for The Information, we're a business and tech publication, so the angle that I personally take is to what extent crypto companies are trying to take advantage of the regulatory environment and what does it mean for the industry long term. And I would say that that's a slightly different approach from some of the bigger publications like The Times, The Wall Street Journal are taking, which is more about the Trump family's influence in crypto and how are they making money through crypto partnerships.
Leo.
I would say speculative bubble, political grift, financial transformation, all 3. None of them?
Yeah.
I think those are the 3 big storylines
right
right now, yeah.
Nina.
I agree with my colleagues here, but I think I'll say that crypto is growing up. We see so many companies go public now, more traditional fintechs and other firms turning back to crypto. So yeah.
Okay. 3 very distinct, very different perspectives. I want to pick up on something you just said, Nina, which is about crypto growing up. As far as reporting is concerned, are you seeing crypto going mainstream? And if so, how is that impacting your reporting? If we're seeing it less as a side asset, less as a kind of as a peculiarity off to one end of the industry, if it's now core finance, TradFi, if you will. Are you seeing that are you seeing things that previously you'd have only covered now showing up in mainstream media? And if so, how does that change the way that you report?
I think going off of what Yueqi and Leo said, that it's so much more political now because we now see reporters covering Trump, including at Forbes. My colleagues have done great stories on that. So I think there's a lot more attention and coverage from that perspective, but also because so many CEOs of public companies are more outspoken about crypto, that definitely also gets more attention.
Yeah, Leo.
I think there's also often a collective amnesia in the crypto industry and people who pay attention that it is cyclical. Like all these stories have happened before to some degree. So even Wall Street getting into crypto, we saw I think 8 years ago, this consortium R3 of some of the biggest banks sort of dipping their toes into crypto. And I think now people will say, oh, this is brand new, JP Morgan's finally interested. You know, we have seen a lot of these storylines before, but to Nina's point, I think it's definitely different this time, and it is less speculative. There is real money being spent by non-crypto people on crypto. So for example, a lot of the stories we're doing now are more M&A stories where you have real TradFi, Silicon Valley players who are spending huge amounts of money, and that's new. Or you see politicians coming in a new way where it's not just paying lip service in case, you know, they annoy the wrong person, but actually passing real legislation that's impacting how the entire financial plumbing of the US works. And I think for that, it's necessary to have people who actually understand the weirdness and technicalities of crypto, who can explain to a broader audience why they should actually be paying attention.
Yueqi.
I would say that one impact of crypto going more mainstream is that the risks that are coming from the crypto market could potentially also spill over beyond the crypto market and into the mainstream financial markets. And that's something that I watch very closely, and I'm trying to study the linkages where the crypto companies' exposures or damages could potentially result in losses or even bank runs in traditional finance world. And we saw some of that in the 2023 regional banking crisis. So even today, I'm still very closely tracking what are the banks that are providing services to crypto companies and who are the big holders of some of the stakes in crypto companies, really just to watch out for in case something collapses, which we know will happen, just given how the crypto markets has been. Like, what's the so what, and where do we find investors or other companies who will potentially suffer from that?
We might get lucky. It might be AI this time, though, so it won't be crypto for once. You know, one thing I was thinking about is that your beat reporters, you've always had to go pretty deep in a particular topic. But crypto is one of those spaces where it's just so enormous, right? And I think about just the asset classes alone. If you know, all the currencies beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum, Doge, and God knows what. And then you've got NFTs and ICOs and, you know, underlying applications of blockchain technology. How do you decide where to draw the line in your scope of inquiry? Because presumably you could just read about this stuff and write about this stuff all day long. It's just enormous. And so somewhere you've got to say, you know, I'll go as far as this NFT or as far as this meme coin, but no further. How do you figure out how to do that, if that makes sense?
I think it's one of the appeals of covering crypto as a beat, and one of the reasons that I think for anybody who has covered crypto, whenever you try to escape, you sort of get pulled back into it, which is that it does intersect pretty much every other beat. And I think, I mean, just in the little more than 3 years I've been at Fortune, there have been periods where I've been a court reporter, a white-collar crime reporter, a finance reporter, a political reporter, you know, and it can change every given week. And I mean, it involves, I think, being very nimble and having to learn different subjects very quickly. But I don't think there is an outer scope for what crypto could touch. And again, I think that's one of the reasons it's an important beat to follow and also such a fun one to be covering.
I like the paraphrasing of the Godfather 2 there. You keep trying to get away and they keep pulling you back.
It's like the Godfather, yeah.
I think for us, at The Information, we're always trying to break news. And my bar for breaking news, ideally, is trying to break something that could be systematically important. And for example, this year, I wrote about how NASDAQ was trying to step up its review and scrutiny of all these publicly listed companies that are turning themselves into crypto treasury stocks. And I kind of raised the question of to what extent NASDAQ is now playing the role of enforcing investor protection of the shareholders of these companies. And I know that will be important because we've covered a lot of the individual deals of companies announcing themselves becoming a crypto treasury stock. But I thought this NASDAQ chain was something that will have a wide range of impact. It will hit a variety of deals, and it's something that's fitting in the moment to cover because we know the SEC is pulling back, and regulators are not scrutinizing crypto as much. So I was trying to figure out what are the market forces and the non-regulators who will be kind of filling up this role.
You had a slight Freudian slip there with the SEC stepping down, and I think that was probably more accurate than we might like to give it credit for. Nina.
As Leo said, I think we all wear different hats from time to time, but at Forbes, we love great entrepreneurial stories, people who have built great fortunes, great companies, seeing what challenges led them to where they are, what lessons they learned. Also, young entrepreneurs, 30 under 30. Also, we love contrarian stories when entrepreneurs do something that the rest of the market doesn't yet, and will later on become a trend. I've written profiles of Michael Saylor, Vlad at Robinhood, Justin Sun. So yeah, these kinds of stories are, I'd say, my top priority, but we also go deep into more esoteric things like perpetuals. Hyperliquid is a great breakout story of the year. So yeah, we can also be technical when we need to.
Yeah, I feel like Nina, you and Yueqi are giving a framework, and Leo, you're just writing constantly. It feels like you're saying what the individuals involved, and I think the framework of things that could be systemically important. And Leo, it just sounds like you're just like whatever, morning to night. I'm just cranking copy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two pillars. It's a story about power and influence, and ultimately at Fortune, that's what we cover. Who are the big decision makers or the people making an impact broadly on the financial system. And crypto has been routinely that story of wielding power in different ways. And that's why I think it can intersect in so many ways, including culture. There's lots of fun, wacky, weird crypto stories that also are a good time to cover.
That's a kind of perfect tee up for my next question, because you must all interact with, I suppose if you're a political reporter, you're going to interact with the George Santoses of the world or whatever, right? But crypto has its fair share of personalities. Is that fun for you? Is it a challenge for you? It's certainly not like being a banking reporter where you might have a Jamie Dimon, but they kind of all fit some sort of mold. But crypto could be anything, right? Is that fun, or is that every time is like going into a boxing ring?
Yeah, we love profiling interesting entrepreneurs, crypto founders. And I think one thing that's very important for the media to be aware of is that crypto companies and crypto founders want to get covered in the media because it provides them with legitimacy. And in a way, we're the gatekeepers of what counts as legitimate. So when I write a founder, I do want to do my due diligence. I wanted to know if this person is going to be the next Sam Bankman-Fried, and if so, I want to cover it with the right level of skepticism. And so I think we are always trying to identify the next important person to cover, and we need to do our homework to make sure that we're giving them both the right level of attention, but also the right context for readers to think about.
Do you, just as a follow-up on that, because you brought up at SBF, I just want to point out I hadn't said it, but you brought it into the conversation now, so it's... Is there a sense as reporters, as media, that when you look back, prior to FTX, do you feel like people weren't looking with as much scrutiny as they could, or that media in this space has at times got carried away and not struck that balance of that kind of distance?
I mean, it was the media, I think, who broke open the FTX story. I think it depends on who's actually paying attention that determines when change happens. I think there was beat reporters before FTX chipping away at that for months about the connection between Alameda, the trading firm, and FTX, the exchange. And ultimately, it was when it got on the radar, or the opportunity of CZ, the Binance founder, that the house of cards came tumbling down. I mean, I think there's a similar dynamic happening now with there's such great reporting being done from crypto reporters at both trade publications and mainstream outlets at places like the Journal or the Times or Fortune or wherever, about, I think, the cycles of money being sent between Binance and the Trump administration, for example. And it's the same sort of issue where all this reporting is out there in the open, but no one's really paying attention necessarily, or there's no real understanding of what type of impact it could have. And I think that's the bigger struggle, is trying to be like, look at these things that are happening and getting people to both understand what it means and then, what the next order effect of that will be.
You have a bright future in PR. Brilliantly answered. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just say it's a very good yes.
I think one great example of this is the digital asset treasury strategies trend. Definitely explosive, so much money, so many billionaires, including the president and his family, involved. But at the same time, we're also trying to identify what are the weaknesses, what could it bring the next bear market. So there's a lot of work that goes into, I think, identifying the links too, as Leo said, that maybe are overseen by everyone because prices are up and everyone's doing great. But when things turn south, we've already done the legwork.
I guess this is a related question to the one I just asked, but and I'll try and think about how to frame this question correctly. I've been wrong about crypto every step of the way, and I published my first book on it, or at least a couple of chapters of my first book on it, and I was still wrong. I've been wrong every step of the way. It required, the whole process has required a kind of a good imagination, let's put it that way. And so, how do you, as reporters, sort of strike that balance between being skeptical and being optimistic, or being able to see? Because if you'd listen to the skeptics day one, there would be no crypto industry. There would be none of this. I mean, if you listen to me, there'd be none of this. So obviously I'm wrong. So it requires some farsightedness, some ability to say, yes, well, if here's how blockchain could be revolutionary, or here's how ICOs could change the world. But then on the other hand, be skeptical. How do you strike that balance for yourselves as writers?
I'd say, I think PR people who pitch us gotta remember who ultimately they bring the story to, because once we take the story, we are going to scrutinize a company or an individual. So it's not necessarily going to be the angle that was pitched, and a lot of questions arise during the reporting process. So it's sort of natural. It's just you go deep on a subject or a company, and you try to learn everything and ask the sort of natural questions that are out there. If the company is doing well and didn't do so well before, what happened, right? And that's how skepticism, as it's seen, is coming up.
It's just journalism.
Exactly.
It's just doing. That's a good note for the PR people in the room. Careful what you wish for when you pitch.
I mean, I think on the prediction standpoint, I feel very grateful every day to not be a market analyst and not have to guess where Bitcoin's going to be in 3 months, because I would be wrong every single time.
Yeah.
People sometimes joke like, oh, you could get rich if you traded, if you were allowed to trade. And I'd be like, no, I wouldn't. I would lose all my money. I have no idea what's going to happen. From a skeptical standpoint, I mean, again, to what Nina said, I think this is the role of being a journalist. I think every journalist by their nature is highly skeptical of anything, and that's what makes you a good reporter. With crypto, I mean, I think the balance is making sure to actually treat it like a real story and not like a farce, treating it like an actual business story, and really taking the time to understand the technology, to understand the players, understand all the history and the lore. And if you do a good faith job of covering a company, even if it's with skepticism and critique, I've found that for the most part, the companies appreciate that, and a lot of people in the space agree with you. And even if it's I won't say takedown, even if it's a more negative piece, if it's done fairly, you might get angry PR response initially, but I think it does build respect overall among the people that we cover.
Yueqi.
I think one reflection I've had this year is that crypto is not only a technology innovation story, but it's also a regulatory innovation story. And a lot of the innovation done by crypto products are more on the regulatory front, meaning that they're pushing the boundary of regulations, there's regulatory arbitrage. And so that's how I approach it. I spend a lot of time studying banking laws and banking regulations, security regulations, and I wrote about how, for example, when you look at real-world crypto use cases, a lot of these trends are happening in countries like Argentina, and I interviewed people in Argentina who talk about how they're storing most of their wealth in Tether stablecoin as opposed to their local currency, just to fight against inflation. So that's, on one hand, you're talking about the innovation and the real-world benefits of it for these individuals. But then if you look at it from a bigger picture point of view, then this is a very big threat for the local central bank, and their banking regulators will not like it, and they're going to try to monitor it and regulate it. So I kind of talk about both sides in my piece.
Got it. We have 1 minute left, so I want to end a little bookend how I began by asking you what the headline is today. What's not, I'll each of you rapid fire, what's not being covered right now about crypto that should be covered? What's the untold headline? What's not getting the focus that it should be getting? You look ready, Leo, so go right ahead.
I mean, it's how I first started getting into crypto coverage, working with this place called Rest of World, which covered tech outside the US. I mean, I think as always, it's the global impact of crypto. Is it going to actually upend global payments, but actually looking at it from the standpoint of not the US?
There is a dearth of projects that have no value, no users, have always been around, and are just not, kind of people embrace them as, okay, they're out there, but are definite scams, and there are just so many. I think it's just, we don't have enough people to cover all that, but it's important because there are real people who put their money into them. So
yeah. And you got to separate the wheat from the chaff. Yueqi, what's not being talked about enough?
That's a great question. I think there are stories that can be covered better and more in depth. I'm interested in all the dealings between Tether, Binance, and all these crypto giants with the Trump family or the Trump administration. I would love to be a fly on the wall to see some of the meetings and how they transpire. And I'm always interested in who got the connections, or intro to who and how that happened. And yeah, it's something that reporters are still trying to uncover.
Right. Well, thank you, all three of you, and thank you for all the great reportage you do. Please give a warm round of applause to our speakers today. Thank you.